talking to you about goals and how you can achieve them and how you kind of break them up, because that's a very important part of this process. So, if you're just joining, watching this in the replay, go down below and I'll give quick links to what I'm talking about. This is just going to be a very quick video, just 5 or 10 minutes and then maybe a few questions. And I am going to be talking about how you break your goals up for as part of your routine, something to keep in mind, because that's the theme of what I'm talking about these days, routines and so on. So hello to everybody who's coming through and passing on your questions. This is not going to be a general language learning video. That's going to be tomorrow. So anything you want to ask, feel free, but I'm going to tackle anything about projects. So when people hear that I got into a lot of 3-month language learning projects, they imagine that this means I maybe was just trying to reach that goal in a general sense. But ultimately, if I would say I want to reach like a lower intermediate level, or I want to be able to have a basic conversation with people, if I would say something like that, then that may be my end goal, but along the way, I actually have other objectives, and I have what I like to call mini missions. So, in the short video, I just wanted to give you some food for thought and show you this. Let me make sure it's coming through okay. Yeah, there we go. So this is kind of like the pyramid of projects. Project pyramid, if you will. So imagine that at the top here you have your final goal. So if it's in learning a language, it might be something like have a basic conversation, or be able to go down to the pub with your friends, or whatever it may be. Read a book in the language. And this isn't just about language learning. This is about any kind of project, like fitness and your learning and reading and so on. So something at the top is the kind of thing that people tend to have in their New Year's resolutions, like speak Spanish. So you want to make sure that that is kind of as specific as possible. It's a very precise goal. So if you decide you want to speak fluently in the language, then you have to understand what that means. So that's something I've written about a lot, so I won't get into that today. But let's say that's your goal, is conversational. It's always a good goal. Then that may be what you want at the end. So this at the top is your 3-month point, or your 6-month point, or your 1-year point. But I would generally make this 3 months or 6 months, if at all possible. And then the next step down are your milestones. Milestone number 1, milestone number 2, milestone number 3. So in my case, whenever I would have a 3-month project, then I'm actually really aiming, like in the day-to-day, I'm more thinking of the milestones at the end of month 1, month 2, month 3. So this is what you want if you have a learning project. Sorry if that's harder to see. There we go. If you have a learning project, then you want to break it up into milestones. And especially if your goal is 3 to 6 months from now or something, then you want to make sure that these are at the end of the months. Okay, so something big is important for that. Something that is ideally you doing something that demonstrates the skill, or a very important milestone in other ways. So in my case, when I would have a 3-month project, those milestones would always be a particular kind of video that I was going to upload to YouTube to try to demonstrate to the world where I had reached in that language. Like it might be a conversation with somebody where I haven't had conversations, and it might be basic, but I've recorded it and I've uploaded it, and it might be the simplest conversation ever, but that would still be my milestone 1 that I worked the month up towards sharing that with people. So which ones you aim for obviously depends on you. I'm not going to get into that today necessarily, the ways you decide. I just want to give you this process that's helped me in working on these projects. So then within all of these you can just about make this out, my mini missions. So if this again is talking about months, then these are the weeks. So each week I have my mini mission number 1, mini mission number 2, and presumably you'd have 4 mini missions in a single month. And that's the kind of thing that would kind of dictate my biggest problem to solve. So when I talk, that's the difference between your milestone, which is some big thing you need to achieve. For me, I would like to think of my mini missions as solving the biggest problem that I have in the language that week. So when I was learning Mandarin, I had like my biggest problem was tones one of the weeks, and I just made that my absolute focus. So rather than do a tiny bit of tones and then learning lots of vocabulary, I mean, there's lots and lots of big issues, but I found that tones was the one causing me my largest problem. When I was learning Spanish, one of the earliest issues I had was with rolling my R. So I had a very intensive week of pronunciation and fixing my pronunciation problems, and that's kind of what I was able to reach that stage of being able to say la R, because I made it a very important core mini mission of pronunciation in general, but it's especially specifically on the letter R. So that's kind of what I would recommend, is you have these mini missions that kind of ask yourself, what is my biggest problem holding me back from reaching my milestones? And then what can I do to solve that problem? So that's kind of thinking about it along those lines. And then here you see there's a giant grid, because this is what your day-to-day work is. And that's a lot more complicated, of course, because that depends on the amount of time that you can put into it and so on. But if you're thinking of like you're trying to imagine on your day-to-day basis, what do you need to do to achieve your mini mission of solving this particular biggest problem? And so as an example, I might, if I was working on my Chinese tones, my Mandarin tones, I would think one day I want to work on the third tone, and I would kind of find the right resources for that, and I would set up a spoken session with a teacher, and the teacher would kind of help me get that particular tone right. And like later in the week, I try to combine all of them together to really truly fix that mini mission. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm trying to work on the individual components to help me reach that particular mini mission. And that's kind of breaking it all down. So this very simple thing that I just drew a few minutes ago, this is what I do when I have my projects. I'm always thinking in these terms, even if I've told everybody, look, this is my end goal. Like the end goal of being conversational in language, that doesn't really help you on your day-to-day basis of knowing what you need to do. And it doesn't help you if you have a particular specific target you're aiming for in the language. You still need to break it up. So it's that breaking up process is very difficult, but try to do that. Try to divide where you want to be at the end of this period of time, and that goal will never be perfect. It'll never be master the language. That is not a good goal. You need to have a goal like over the next few months that you know is achievable if you were to really push yourself, and you can like from there aim for a higher goal and so on. But within that, then you break that up into your milestones that might be at the end of each month, potentially something that might be very different and very unique that can get you there. And then you have your mini missions, and then on a day-to-day basis you kind of structure that plan. Okay, so I am going to answer some of your questions real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. If you have any general language learning questions, feel free to ask them again tomorrow. I'll be back about the same time, and I'll be taking your general questions, but very fast. Let's see. So we had Alan Watts on YouTube said, can you share how you'll structure your Mandarin reactivation with your other goals? Okay, so when it comes to a reactivation project, in that case, my goal with Mandarin is like, imagine the starting point at the bottom and then where I want to be at the top. So instead of deciding, oh, I want to like aim for something really impressive, I want to like pass the HSK exam. No, like thinking about it, my goal will be, I want to be exactly where I was at the end of my Mandarin project from whatever it was 5 years ago. So I want to be able to I want to be at the basic conversational level in Mandarin. So that'll be the goal. And then how I would break it up over the various months would be, maybe month 1 is remember everything that I remember, all the basics that I had learned. Month 2 is getting into the harder parts of it, and then month 3 is maybe having very regular conversations. And the difference being that in my previous project, I might have only needed a few months to get there, but I was doing that full time, whereas in my reactivation project, we're only talking a couple of hours a day, which is nothing like the level of intensity. So that's why you have to have less. So the amount of like adventurousness you kind of inject into what this goal is has to reflect the amount of time you can put in. So that's what I would do, is I would first have that goal to be where I was before, basic conversational, and then if and when I reach that goal, then I start over, and I can be like, okay, now I want to be fluent Mandarin or whatever it might be. But that would be a separate project. I would not aim for fluent Mandarin as my very first project. You gotta break it up into what you think is the first giant goal you want your project to be about. And for me, that would be for reactivation. That would be to get back to where I was before. Okay. So SS on YouTube says, what are your goals for 2018? The first one is to get a consistent routine such that I'm getting a lot more done each day, because I'm not getting as much done as I'd like to, both in terms of my business and in terms of learning languages and in terms of just personal projects, because my routine was completely messed up. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to try and do more of these live videos and share what I'm doing to fix that routine problem. So that's kind of my first project of the year. And I have a few other interesting ones, but I'm going to keep you guys in suspense for those, because I need to be absolutely sure my routine and my workflow is improved, and then I can confidently get into new projects. But I don't want to say right now, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to go to all of these countries, because if I haven't really got on top of the base problem that's going to affect all of these projects, then I'm setting myself up for failure. So you got to think just one giant goal at a time. So right now, the only thing I'm definitely working on is my my workflow, my ability to stick to a schedule and get things done. And that's what I'm my major project at the moment. Okay, so another question. This one's from Diana. Would you suggest focusing on one goal at a time or stretching them out so you can work on multiple at a time? Yeah, that's actually addressing what I was only just now saying. Definitely one goal at a time. That would be a major milestone, and then separating them out would be more something you would maybe have at the back of your head. Like, obviously, if you're learning a language, you have a particular milestone. You know you want to go for higher. You want to be fluency, mastery, and so on. But that's fine. You can be aware of that. But in terms of making plans and having projects, it's got to be more narrowed into what your most immediate one is. Because people get lost in the distant projects too often. And that's intimidating, because if you have a distant project to speak fluent Spanish or whatever it may be, and you're just starting right now, then it can feel like you'll never reach that goal because you're working on being a beginner. And actually, being a beginner isn't that bad, but people just need to appreciate what it takes to get to be a confident beginner and enjoy that project and make that project your central goal, and not be constantly thinking to yourself, oh, I'm a failure, I'm so bad, I'm only a beginner. No, your project is to get to a confident beginner stage, and you worry about the rest later. Okay? So, let's see, a couple of very quick final questions. Let's see, a few people are saying that they're going to take me to the FBI or CIA to work with them. Yeah, I can see that, except for the fact that I don't have the American citizenship. You probably need that to do those things. Oliver Eckert says, on routines, how should I spend my time to improve my Spanish as quickly as possible? you need way more specificity, because you're saying improve my Spanish, but what does that even mean? You need to say that what is your biggest problem and what is the biggest priority. So you might be thinking that you aren't a confident speaker, and then that means that rather than improve my Spanish, what the question truly is that should be thought about is how can I become a confident speaker. And that's the goal that you decide your time is working towards improving that. And this is a crucial thing, because I generally don't have language learning projects that are just improve my whatever. I try to have specific goals also within the components of the language. So as a beginner especially, I work on speaking, and that is always going to be my focus as a beginner. And that means I don't do so much work on writing and learning grammar, which I do later on in the language. But the problem I ask myself is what is happening that's preventing me from being able to have basic conversations. And one of the biggest things to solve that is have a lot of conversations. Practice, practice, practice. So that's kind of what I would say for you, Oliver, is maybe if your question is, how do I improve my Spanish? That's kind of showing you the root of what the problem is you're not really thinking about the specifics that you might want to solve, or goals that are more narrow than just improve my Spanish. And you should always be thinking, if possible, especially if you're having an intensive project, to improve your reading abilities, to improve your speaking abilities, to improve your listening comprehension as kind of core aspects. But then, if you have a goal like B2 in Spanish or B1, then you can separate it into the different milestones covering listening and reading and so on. But if possible, try to make it simpler, have a specific part of the language that you are aiming towards improving. So I hope that answers that question. Maybe one or two more questions and then I'll wrap up. And of course, I'll be very happy to answer all of your questions tomorrow. That can be about any general thing for language learning. Okay, so Aaron Thomas on Facebook asked, what do you do if you ever feel incredibly overwhelmed by an unforeseen difficulty in terms of having miscalculated how realistic your goal is versus how much time you're able to put in? That is a very good question, yes. So when you have this triangle, this pyramid of goals and how you split your project up, one thing you may discover halfway through is that you did not decide to pace yourself very well. And rather than force the project to fit into what you've got and be like, okay, I'm super behind on my milestone number 1. I'm already about to reach milestone number 2. But you know what? In this last week, I'm going to try and achieve both milestone number 1 and milestone number 2. No, don't do that. Don't do that. No, do not do that. What I would suggest is you start over. The work you've done now has been great to get you to a particular place, and you have achieved something, but what you need to do now is redraw your project plan. Start over with, you're starting over here, and you have a new milestone and a new set of milestones to get you to it might be the same goal, but you might realize, do you know what? I tried to do this in 3 months. That was not possible at all. So this last month and a half, I didn't get where I wanted to go. So what I'm going to do instead now is I'm going to have a 6-month project, and I'm going to split it up even more, because I know that the level of intensity wasn't possible for what I was doing previously. So that's what I would suggest for that, is start over. Do not try to force your current timeline and your current project goals into what you're doing just because you've already started it. You might need to just reboot it because your current project is not doing it for you. Okay? And SS on YouTube asked how 2018 is going so far. Hope you achieve your goals. Thank you very much. I have been struggling. With my routine project. You guys may have seen, if you follow my YouTube video, that I would have done live last week, or my emails. that I really wanted to do more consistent live videos, but part of my problem is setting the routine means I try to schedule a live video, and then I have so many problems that I'm not organized enough to solve ahead of time that mean I don't do that. And that is a huge frustration for me. I want to stop doing that. I want to be doing these videos consistently. I want to be getting on top of my schedule consistently. But I'm accepting that I'm not going to solve this immediately. It's why I'm not deciding, solve my routine in 1 month. I'm not putting a time limit on it, because I know I've got a lot of individual reasons that have prevented me from being as efficient as I was before, and I'm trying to solve all those reasons. So 2018 has been a learning process for me, but I'm definitely getting better, and I look forward to talking about the specifics for that. But one of the reasons is I'm kind of being more looking at the outline of it more. So this is something I'm actually doing with my routine project, is I'm breaking it down, and I'm thinking, what's a milestone that I need to get to, rather than thinking I need to have the perfect routine and the perfect schedule that works 100% of the time. I need to kind of set my sights on smaller things, and as I achieve those smaller things, then that step ladder can help me get to the next thing a lot bigger. Whereas if I'm thinking only it needs to be a perfect schedule, then I'm going to feel discouraged throughout the entire project, because I'm never going to get to that perfect schedule. There's always going to be issues that come up. So 2018 has kind of shown me and what I need to do to get on top of these things, and I'm very optimistic, and I can't wait for all of the new learning projects I'm going to have ahead of me. And then final question, Kimberly on YouTube: is it common to change milestone to a goal and mini goals to milestones? Absolutely. As you can see, I just scribbled this onto a piece of paper. This is not etched in stone. So you can absolutely change your milestones to goals if you feel like maybe the project you have needs to fill out the entire 3 months just to get to that first milestone. Then that's kind of resetting the whole thing, like I mentioned before. And sometimes your mini goals might expand to milestones. Whatever works for you. Don't think that once you set this out, once you make your plan over the next few months, that is what it has to be, or you're a failure. Absolutely not. Accept that this may not be how your next months go. Just try as hard as you can to stick to it. And then if you realize it's not working, see why it isn't working and apply that immediately to a new plan of action. And it doesn't matter if you're not at the start of the month. Don't wait. I know it's the 25th of January. Don't wait until it's the 1st of February. Those things are irrelevant. Like, I personally work on weekly circles. So I would start my project, or I started my routine project at the middle of the month, whatever day the Monday was then. And I didn't care that, it's not nicely tidied into like finishing on or starting on January 1st or whatever. Don't worry about that. Just fit it with whatever schedule you have. Okay? So thanks everybody for joining me. I'm glad I got to handle a bunch of your questions. I will be back again tomorrow for your general language learning questions, of course. And otherwise, thanks for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in your own projects, and happy language learning.